as a physician, the one thing that I can tell people who really are concerned with their health and wellness is if you're not at least thinking about the quality of your sleep, you're making a huge mistake. Sleep is when you program your hormones, your immune system. It's when you regenerate. If you get that wrong, you're going to suffer. And I think the idea that just have a bigger cup of coffee at Starbucks in the morning and I think it's also entrepreneurial, you don't need much sleep and people wear it like a badge of honor. I think that's a terrible meme that we've sold to people. You were designed to rest and recover over a third of your life for a reason. It is a reason. It's necessary. And you can't skip that and expect it to work out well. And so if you sleep poorly today and you think you're healthy, the message I want to get is that you are on a crash course. I don't know when the car is going to crash, but just know that this is your call to say, I need to do something and start paying attention to my sleep and get this right. Because it's gonna catch up to you in a nonlinear way that's not going to make you happy one day. Obviously, I reveal myself as a light, attentive person by wearing rose-colored glasses, but I'll tell you more about them as it goes on. But yeah, so the ear, nose, and throat part is not what got me excited about light. So that was just what got me into being a physician and a surgeon. But sleep medicine is really what really turned me on to light. I became board certified in sleep medicine back, it was 2011, I want to say. And that's when I started just looking at everybody's sleep. And that's really what started to develop my interest in light as I asked some questions. So it started really just with me testing people for sleep apnea. To be honest, that's probably what most people come in when they have a sleep problem. They're concerned, do they have sleep apnea? And the mainstay for sleep physicians is a sleep test. So you go in a lab, they wire you up with all kinds of monitors and go to sleep, and you wake up, and then the doctor hopefully says you do or don't have sleep apnea or other sleep disorders. And after doing this for years, I realized that, in medicine, we have, false positive, false negative test results. All the patients that I sent had a sleep problem. Why? Because they told me so. And only some of them ended up with a diagnosis, right? And so I was sending some patients out the door saying, everything's normal, congratulations. And so, I knew that wasn't the case. And so I really started scouring through these tests, looking for hints, and started noticing some small patterns, people not having deep sleep or dream sleep, or, just different patterns in the sleep that didn't turn out to be like an ICD-9 or 10 diagnosis that we use in medicine, but they were abnormalities that nonetheless seemed to be piling up and accumulating in my mind as what's really wrong with all these people. And soon after that, I said, well, how do you interact with those sleep stages? That's not something that sleep physicians really do. That medicines have side effects of changing these. But I said, how would I orchestrate this better? And so, of course, like any good physician, you start doing your own homework, your own citizen science. And I, at the time, started using a commercial grade device that I could use to measure my sleep. And I started doing things with supplements and different things, trying to see how I could modify my own sleep, making certain stages go up and down. And so long story short is I learned a few things, but then one fateful day, I watched a video on YouTube that just caught my attention, and it said vitamin D, migraines, and sleep apnea. And at the time, I had no idea that there was a connection to any of those things. So I watched it. It was a grand rounds by a neurologist in, I think it was in Texas. And basically talking about vitamin D's input on migraines and sleep apnea, which actually that's not, the input to the two of them are not so different, but it turns out they're the same area in the brainstem that controls this stuff. And I thought that was miraculously interesting. And it brought me back to vitamin D's impact. A lot of the studies you'll see low vitamin D, and most of these sleep patients, they all have low vitamin D. And so of course, that's the first thing I started doing, replacing vitamin D very aggressively, and you get very wonderful results. You start seeing when you get the vitamin Ds up to more appropriate levels, some patients will just start saying, oh my God, I sleep great. And so that started me down this vitamin D thing. But not everybody gets better, which is the one great caveat. And so the question is why? And so I still had that question. But vitamin D, well, vitamin D is really a light story. And, you make vitamin D with light, with UV light. And so then I started realizing we don't talk a lot about light. I don't know much about light. Light gets into physics. Our training is very biology, biochemistry, physiology, pharmacology heavy, but we don't really talk about physics much. There's no physics section in medical school where you go over the biophysics. And when you get into this, you find that there's a whole other world, and this is where light interacts. Light interacts with electrons and protons, and it turns out that that's where a lot of some of the science and research is being done with red light and other things, and we're seeing how that interacts with the body, and it interacts with water, it interacts with our cells and the mitochondria and all kinds of interesting ways. And so now you say, well, I didn't learn anything about electrons, protons, and light in medical school or in my training. So now maybe I need to start checking out a little bit more.
So what can you tell us about how light impacts our health and our sleep, and also talk about hormones, because you've also done a lot of work on the thyroid as well.
Yeah, so thyroid, it's ironic. And so this is what we talked about, that ENT was a gateway, but for me, but the thyroid's huge. Obviously, all women ask me about their thyroid hormones as an ENT surgeon. And of course, all that's really important. That's not generally my impact for their care at that point. But how does the thyroid interact with all this? Well, the thyroid hormone is set by the pituitary, okay, which is set by the clock in your head, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And where does that get set? That gets set with light cycles. And that gets set through your eye. And so the light that your eye is exposed to is really important in winding that clock. The gears of that clock, humans' natural circadian rhythm runs longer than 24 hours. So most people don't realize that. In other words, we don't have a Rolex that's on time. Our Rolex is actually slightly out of time. And we see this with blind people who have a certain disease called non-24, where they start, their circadian rhythms go off a little bit every day. And then there's a point where they'll actually flip, and their day will be night and their night will be day, and vice versa. So when you let someone's clock free run without any information, it doesn't keep time with the natural light cycles of life. And so our body was designed to wind that clock just like a bad watch that's, can't hold time. Every day you got to rewind it, otherwise it's going to run out and give you the wrong time. And so the light cycles tell your body, really controls all of your, not only hormonal balance, but biochemistry, because you're designed to put on fat depending upon where you live in the fall, preparing for winter. You're designed in the winter to burn fat. I mean, this is really like polar bear, hibernation 101. Your circadian rhythms and the light cycles, not only they control the food that you eat that's available. So the polar bear can't eat a banana in the winter because they don't grow where the polar bear is. But the light cycles change the availability of certain foods, and those foods with the light cycles tell your body, hey, winter's coming, get fat so you can hibernate. And when you're in winter, the polar bear is not exposed to really any light that people can think of, but they are exposed to a light that you can't see, and that's infrared light, because there is some emission of infrared from most things. And so their body, literally, they're fasting, they get ketotic, infrared light, cold, and they become a fat burning machine, and they come out of hibernation with no fat, muscular, ready to hit the spring and then eat and then gain weight again. And so that's one of the ways the circadian rhythms are tied to everything, because every gene, and we all talk about genes and DNA, which has been a pretty disastrous project of not learning much, because only 4% or so, or less than 10% of diseases are truly genetic according to the DNA studies. But it turns out that every gene has a clock gene, like a pre-transcriptional clock gene before it. So what that means for people who are listening and they're like, well, I'm not a geneticist, means that before your body follows any instructions that your DNA holds, it says, what time is it? It wants to know what time is it. So when your time in your body is off, you have a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And this is both a global, a local, and a cellular problem, because you not only keep time in your brain clock, which is in the middle of your head, the SCN, you're keeping time in the cell clocks, in your organs, in your skin.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have, if you're eating bananas all winter, you're sending a signal to your gut, and your gut sends signals to your liver that it's summer. The bananas grow in the summer. That's in strong light cycles, long, strong UV light cycles. And so if it's winter in your area and your gut thinks it's summer, we have a mismatch. Once you have a mismatch, that's what we call chaos, and that's what we call inflammation. When you have a mismatch, you don't have a quantized, connected system. When the system isn't connected, the chaos that ensues is inflammation. And inflammation, we all know, is a big problem when we talk about disease.
So now we have cell phones, screens, our kids in schools, and with a cell phone, everyone staying up late at night with these screens emitting blue light.
Right. So I'll quickly tie the two EMFs together, because the one third grade lesson that every doctor knows is melatonin controls sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So everybody knows melatonin. In fact, that's the first thing that sleep patients do, is they go to the store and buy melatonin thinking, well, if I get this sleep chemical, I'll have good sleep. And it usually works for a little bit until your body realizes it's being tricked, because again, it's a coupled cycle. And when you destroy that coupled cycle, something's going to go wrong. But blue light is the frequencies in the blue light spectrum are the greatest suppressors of melatonin.
Mm-hmm.
So once you destroy melatonin, you now don't have it, not only locally in your bloodstream, but even on the cellular level. And melatonin, turns out, is not just about a sleep, chemical. It's one of the very powerful antioxidant. Okay, it seems to be anti-cancer, and then that's not super well understood. But I would tell you, its connection to anti-cancer also has to do with making melatonin requires light in the mitochondria, and the mitochondria, turns out, makes melatonin, and also has the regenerative processes for autophagy and apoptosis built in. And that's, so when you don't see the right light signals, you can't regenerate your tissues. And you do that in sleep. And so basically, when you lose sleep, I always tell patients, it's like buying a new car and never getting an oil change. The car's going to run. It's going to run today. It's going to run tomorrow. It's going to run for months. It's going to run really well until what? The engine valves are just scraping in there, and then one day it's going to seize and break really bad, because the car can't regenerate itself. So you just deteriorate it, you're done. We can. And when we lose that ability, what do we see? We see diseases, exploding, and that's what's every day happening. And so turns out that, guess what? EMF, radio frequencies, other types of invisible EMF that I'm sure your listeners are aware of, they also suppress melatonin.
Right.
So we now have a double-edged sword suppressing our ability to regenerate tissues, which is our only way to get out of disease. So if you have a disease at home and you're saying, well, I'm doing all these things to get better, if you don't have good sleep, you really have no true way to get around it. You are literally just maintaining some level of health, but you cannot reverse and regenerate the tissues to make them work better. So you're just gonna never get, you can only get so high. So you'll improve things a little bit, maybe cut down on some of the toxins in your life and the diet. And again, the mitochondria, which are light-driven organelles in our cells, the power that they contain is what drives a lot of the glutathione and natural detox. So everyone who's worried about detoxing, if they can't create enough, I'm going to just say energy, because ultimately the mitochondria produce an electrical gradient, and that energy is electrical in nature. It's electromagnetic. If you can't generate enough charge in your mitochondria, you can't run certain processes, because that's just how the system, that's the biophysics of it. And that's what's really crazy. And your body uses water and collagen networks to transfer all these energy flows. And there's tons of information out there. But again, as a physician, I never saw any of this until I started reading on my own. And it's all out there.
Mm-hmm. So what are you recommending when you first see patients and they have sleep issues and they have blue light and screens? Tell me what people can do
So let's talk about these glasses here, and I'll actually I'll show you another pair that this is usually what I would recommend people start with. So you can take what's basically a $10 pair of goggles, and I have some links to these resources on my website so people who want to start and try. These block the key frequencies that suppress melatonin. So the first thing you should do is protect your eye clock. Light hygiene is the most important thing when you're trying to get circadian rhythms right. And the eye clock, that's the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that one's fed directly through your eye. Now, it turns out, your eye has some photoreceptors called melanopsin. They're blue light receptors. So does your skin. So does your blood vessels. We'll probably find it in every organ and every body system in the next 10 years. Doesn't matter. The problem is, where do you start? With the master clock, because that's what everything looks to compare. So you got to get that right first. And you start doing that, and you'll notice, God, I'm yawning. I'm tired. I feel a little better. When I started just wearing these glasses, in about 3 months, I lost about 8 pounds. Didn't do anything. Why? Because your glucose metabolism is controlled by light. And so once I got that right, my body said, hey, metabolize glucose, lose a little weight. No change in my diet. That was pretty exciting for me. That got me a little more interested in going a little deeper in the rabbit hole for sure. So getting some glasses, these are custom glasses I had made back in the day. There's websites now. There's a website, Raw Optics, on my website, and I think the name of my website, Quantum Sleep, is a discount code you can use. But basically, you can get custom-made glasses that look more appropriate if you want to wear them around town. You're not probably going to wear space goggles in your local region, but both prescription and non-prescription glasses. These are prescription glasses, so it makes it a challenge. They're specially tinted, and again, it's frequency specific that we're talking about, so you have to block the right frequencies.
So you wear these all the time, not just with screens, so that when you're out and about.
So these are orange, these amber colored ones. I don't know how well that translates on the screen here, but so here, I'll do this. These are glasses I wear during the day, and they're clear. You can see my eyes now, people. Yes, I have eyes. These are a little different because these are daytime glasses. They still block blue light, not as intensely, only about 40% of certain frequencies in there. Because guess what? You were designed to have blue light in your life. The problem is how much blue light. And,
right.
This is a good time to show you a quick little picture, and I hope this will translate pretty well. But so this is, I'm not going to shine this on our people, but this is a white light that I'm flashing. And I have a spectrometer here, and a spectrometer basically is a little device that can turn the colors of the rainbow in the light you see and display that. And so I'm going to show this and see how well. What you'll see is there's a really large spike, and for those who can't see the color all that well, that spike is blue. It's 440 nanometers.
Yeah, I can see it. And that's from the flashlight that you just showed?
The flashlight, it's a white. Anyone who's looked at it would say, oh, that's a white colored light. But the hugest component is a spike of blue, which is in that blue light hazard, which is the worst frequency of light to suppress melatonin. Now, next to that is a little hump with some green, a little orange and such, and a tiny bit of red. But so that's not such a great light, because that light is going to suppress your melatonin. And since it's sundown now, we were designed to have no blue light. So that frequency on, if it's in your hi-hats above your head, if it's in your screen or the TV, all that light. Now, here I'm going to hit this just in the room. Let's see if I can get a signal. Well, I think as I got so much light, it's not giving me, but I don't really have another good idea. I probably have to shut some lights off. I'm not getting the overhead, but I wanted to show an incandescent. The incandescent, if I could show you that, basically has a curve where it's mostly red and rolls down as it gets to blue. So there's really no blue, which is why incandescent light bulbs and candles are kind of a little more appropriate kind of nighttime lighting, because you don't have the same spike of blue. So you're not having the same melatonin effects. Now, don't get me wrong. Red light does suppress melatonin a little bit, so it's not perfect. You're designed to be in darkness. But since you're going to do something, you should make a choice that's not going to harm you. So I use a lot of red lights at night. I'm not doing that right now, but because I'm trying to light up the room.
But when you, okay, let's talk light bulbs and go back to screens after talking
Sure.
about light bulbs. So I bought out, I have a lot of incandescent, and I also got halogen because, like, what do you think about halogens then that don't have a transformer for the other EMF? Do you?
Yeah. So yeah, but most of the halogens still do have a kind of a blue spike. Obviously, halogen. Saying halogen is like saying, it's just such a broad spectrum. So I mean, without testing the bulb and looking at it, there probably are some halogen that are okay.
Mhm.
But again, the one light that's least penalizing at night is a red. So you really want your spectrum of light. Now, when do people turn on the lights? They do. People work indoors with no windows, but most of the time we're talking about lights. We're talking about lighting at night. So really, that's a challenge. It's a challenge that we have. Once you start putting in light frequencies that make it more cool white, the colors that the way people talk about lighting, you've instantly messed up the circadian nature because you're adding in frequencies that are heading towards blue, and green light suppresses melatonin. So if there's, if you look at the spectrum, and incandescents have a fair amount of green, which is why if I stay on the red side, I'm still getting a little suppression, but I'm avoiding green and blue, which are the, probably the bigger ones. And that's why the lenses, they have to be a certain type of frequency blocker to make them useful. There's a lot of companies that now are getting on the bandwagon. In fact, I spoke to someone the other day and they're like, oh yeah, my optician told me about blue light and I got this coating. They spent another $100 on a coating that's really not doing that much. I wanted to say, get your money back, but it's too late. But so the frequencies matter, and just because they say blue light blocking doesn't mean you're getting the benefits, the health benefits I'm looking to gain as a sleep physician when I recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, because we're not acknowledging this, at the federal level, really, which I think that we need. Like, I have a covering that goes over my computer screen right now. And I have another covering, which I misplaced in our move, that is red.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it look red, that is
Yep.
like at night.
Mm-hmm.
But even this, what I have now, I mean, I'm wondering if that's, if that's not so safe to have something, because you can still see through it. It's not red. And from what I understand about children's eyes, they're far more vulnerable and the light can go
Yeah,
deeper
the
in.
children have much more translucent lenses, and so they
Right.
let even more blue light. So when you see that little kid swiping left and right on the phone, their eyes are even more sensitive. And you know, I've given you kind of the entry level blue light understanding, but to get a little complicated for a second, blue light literally photooxidizes
Right.
structures in your eye and has been associated in tons of research to cause damage, especially LED lights more so than other types of lighting in the eye. And not only is it damaging the eye, but these are the structures in the eye that communicate to your clock. So really, again, a double whammy. If you destroy function in your eye, the eye is also not just a camera, but it's a clock. You're destroying the clock function, which means your circadian rhythm is worse too, because your ability to gain the signals is getting destroyed too. And so this is one of the problems, is that the more blue light you have, the more destruction of lipids and certain lipids in your eye that you're photooxidizing that now cannot transmit signal further down. And so that's one of the reasons I recommend a fair amount of seafood. It's a great way to get the particular type of DHA structure that can communicate these signals, in the cells, and especially in your eye.
So in our state of Maryland, where I am, there was a bill that was passed. It's been almost 2 years now. But what they did is they created best practices for screens, and this was launched because of parents talking about screens in terms of the blue light and the impact to their children's eyes, blindness later down the line, as well as the impact from radio frequency and the wireless radiation. Unfortunately, what ended up happening was what got issued is very watered down. But I want to talk about kids in schools, because they are using screens in some schools. Every class is on a screen, even gym. They're using screens in gyms. And what are the risks to children and the impacts, and how can it be mitigated by the school system? In addition to what can we do at home? I mean,
That's a real big challenge. I mean, the first thing is we just use light all the time. I mean, even in my office with a window, someone walks in and there's no lights on, they go, oh, it's so dark in here. But to me, the natural light is enough. I mean, it's when you get out of the car and the radio's blasting, you don't notice it until you get back in the car the next time when your set point kind of threshold in your ear adjusts. And so we're just so light heavy, it just becomes the new norm. It's like sugar. You don't notice sugar when you have all these sweet things all the time. You don't notice how sweet they are. So you have to like back away. I'm so sensitive. When someone goes to show me their phone and says, hey, look at this, I literally recoil because the screens are so eerily blue-white. I can just, it almost hurts me to look at it, and I almost have to like hold it back. And it's not that you're getting sensitive in a bad way. You're actually getting sensitive in a good way, because it really is literally causing a stress response in your body. I mean, blue light actually causes a stress response. It turns on your autonomic nervous system and says, go into fight or flight mode. And that's why some people, you just shut the lights off. I'll sometimes have a patient, and if it's later at night, and if I just shut the lights off and I say, how do you feel? I mean, most people, 9 out of 10, will instantly say, I feel better. I feel calmer. Like whatever they're feeling, like just seems to like shut down a little bit, especially when you have fluorescence overhead. Because they're just terrible too. Fluorescence, LED, all these lights, even the xenon headlights are really tough. You do a lot of driving with all these lights flashing on you.
Yeah. Oh, let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, these are all just really strong blue light spectrum lighting. And, the energy efficiency is great, but really the energy efficiency has shrunk the spectrum of frequencies of light that are in it so that it's only a couple of frequencies, but the main driver is blue. And that also, for whatever reason, it's not really for everyone. To be honest, blue light also, because of its hormonal effects and such, is really like an addictive light. It's really, it's like sugar. We talk about sugar addiction. People say, well, you're addicted to sugar. Well, why is that? I mean, but blue light drives your body to crave those sorts of things, which is an even worse thing, is that your sugar addiction is actually an epigenetic adjustment. When you're being driven by a constant blue light, you're being told that it's the summer and there are carbohydrates available. So you're expected to go out and pick some berries off a tree at 24/7. That's what the bear was doing, that in the example before. And he was eating the food that was available. So, that's the other thing, is that you're not actually craving the things that you think and why you think. It's really the environment is interacting with your body and telling you that.
So let's talk about what people can do. You talked about blue light glasses, which you start at night.
Yes.
Like
so
when the sun
$10
goes down.
you can enter that real easy if you want to look stylish. You can get custom made glasses. And again, as I said, I have a link to Raw Optics on my site and a discount code. And I have links to all these things. I mean, the light bulbs anywhere you see light, you need to say what kind of light bulb is emitting this. You don't need, there are meters, and I showed my little meter here, and you can spend a ton of money, but most people are not going to want to do that. Since you can see light, it's the one EMF you can see most of the time, say, where is this light coming from? Oh, it's from that hi-hat. Well, go take a look at that bulb. Oh, it's an LED light bulb. Well, guess what? Anything that says LED, compact fluorescent, these are the biggest offenders for blue light. You can start switching over to, antique or incandescent bulbs, and just candlelight, and just being aware of turning the lights on. Do you really need the lights? Then you get into other things which are a little harder, like TVs and computers. But
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Computer screens and laptops.
Yeah. So, and again, I have this on my website, but Iris software is probably one of the best. It not only reduces blue light, but also flicker, which is a complicated subject, but it does take out some of the flicker, and that's a worthwhile expense. The software to purchase. They have a freeware version, which is very limited, but that's a worthwhile expense. Before that, I used software called Flux, or justgetflux.com, which is pretty good. That doesn't have the same flicker effects, but it adjusts the red light. It's definitely more red light heavy at night. So when the sun goes down, it already knows and starts adjusting for you. But again, the settings that are in these, if you don't have some direction, you can put Flux on and it's really not doing all that much. And then, like my screen is, when I'm looking at it, it's almost completely red. I really see a monochrome red right now. that's probably for my glasses, although my computer does have the iris software on it. So if I took these off, I would say, oh, it looks exactly the same actually. But again, that's not how I would use the computer during the day. So there's day, night, and you want to kind of set it to your taste, what you can tolerate, what you need. If you're a graphics designer, you're not going to work under red, but then maybe you shouldn't do that at night. So there's the mitigation depends on the circumstance. But if you have to be on a computer, you should use some sort of protection. If the color's not important, go as heavy to the red side as you can. If you're just writing text, you don't need to see any major color differentiation, then go as heavily as you can because you're cutting out that blue light. And at the end of the day, the more unfettered blue without red that you have, see, it turns out red is the antidote to blue in the body. So the body uses inflammation created by blue light to run programs, but it offsets it with the red light to kind of mitigate the damage. But when you just have blue light, blue light, blue light, you basically have damage without any kind of antidote to kind of quell that damage. So the more blue light you have during the daytime, even though that's when blue light exists, if you're getting it like 4 times as much as you should in nature without any red, you're really still causing a damage that's, again, it's less damaging than doing it at night, but it's still damage, and it all adds up.
Oh, I see. So you're saying you need to balance the blue light with the red light.
I mean, adding red light into your indoor existence is a good thing because red light is the antidote to the blue, and that's how nature designed it. And so nature always has red and blue together, but only we as humans have blue light unfettered without the red based on our lighting choices.
But when you have red light, and I've seen some people with these red lights that they have in their home, is there a way you can buy a bulb? Is it just a red light incandescent? Like, how do you get this red light?
So this is a standard looking night light, and this is a standard night light bulb. That's an LED red bulb, and you can see it's got a little red lip, but I can't turn it on because it's a plug-in. But so you can buy a red incandescent, it's called a party bulb, and it gives a red light to the room. So these are things that you can do, and there are red LED light bulbs that you can get. And there are red LED night lights that are cuter looking than the old-fashioned one, but I happen to have this, and so if it had the bulb, I could replace the bulb. That's different than buying a red light device that you're looking to add what I'll say is therapeutic red light, because again, red light is used in photobiomodulation. There's lots of studies on that, and the frequency of the red light matters. Whereas the party bulb is whatever you're not it's not that frequency specific, and you're not really tuned in. But different frequencies of red and infrared light do have, medical uses, and scientific studies have shown. And it's not so out there in mainstream, but there's a huge Tina Carew and Hamblin. There's a lot of smart people putting out a lot of research of figuring out how this works, how it interacts with water, how it interacts with mitochondria, how it interacts with certain diseases. But so there is red light we use in a therapeutic way. So, but that's different than what we're talking about here. But red light can be used in that way as well.
Wow. So, how about where do we find incandescent bulbs? I mean, you
go to Home Depot or Lowe's or your standard. They won't be in the regular section. They're like now called antique or, but there are decorative bulbs. They now have a different name, but they're there, and they're obviously less cost effective. So you're going to change them more frequently, which is why everyone's like, well, why would I want to put this light bulb in and never change it again for the next 5 years? Yes, but did you know there's a health cost? When you don't know that, it seems great to spend $5 on a light bulb that you'll never replace for 5 years. But if you recognize that turning that light bulb on at night is going to cost you years of your life to some degree, whatever that means, it's different for everybody. But the scary thing is we have studies showing the links of melatonin, low melatonin, linked to breast cancer, to prostate cancer, to lots of cancers that are common diseases that people are getting. And I promise you, there are people listening to this that have these cancers that have never been told that blue light is suppressing their melatonin, and that low melatonin is setting the stage for their cancer. And that even tamoxifen therapy for breast cancer patients has been shown when people block blue light, that tamoxifen works better. Well, that's because the blue light is almost inherent in the pathophysiology of why they got the breast cancer. So of course, when you take away the toxin that caused it, you're going to do better than with being, than having it still in your life.
I know there's a lot of research at NIH on blue light at night, and I guess, we're talking about changes that we can make at home. And in some people, they can do that in their office if they're privileged to do so. But
Tricky.
one of the problems is that occupationally, workers at night, fluorescent lights, blue light on the screen, they go to their boss. This is an occupational health issue as well as for children in schools, which is comparable when it comes to electromagnetic fields to occupational exposures at every level with what we're doing. But for workers especially, I think about when I'm, on the highway at night and you see all those workers, right, under those bright lights working on the bridges. And I'm just thinking, wow, they're just getting started at 11 o'clock. They're,
Yeah. And we've known about this from way before LED times, that shift workers are sicker people.
Right.
Across the board. And we know this from the nurses' health studies. The night nurses have more miscarriage and diabetes and hypertension and everything. And so the sad thing is that was still with incandescent light bulbs. So just realize that just the incandescent bulbs back in the day were enough to, and the fluorescent, because some of the hospital workers that were having this were probably under fluorescence. But now we're all under even worse lighting because the blue frequency power is even higher. So, and now it's even in your own home. So now you're a shift worker and you didn't know it. That's the thing. Just watching your favorite, show at night is being a shift worker.
Right. Exactly. Binge watching, which is what industry wants us to do. Well, so how do we, a key part of all meaningful change is pressuring industry and, having them like, I will buy it. If you get me the blue light, like, let's shift away from this technology that is harmful. How do we support that? Is there any research happening where companies...
Well, I mean, GE put out a position paper, I don't know how many years ago, about more human-centric lighting. And this human-centric is there's different marketing gizmo words that they use, but, at the end of the day, there is a movement towards this. But the bottom line is again, the cost is the issue, is people like to save money. So, the light bulb that's going to be better for your health to a certain degree is going to cost more. So when they're doing a project and there's 5,000 lights they got to buy, and they said, well, you can buy a $10 light bulb that's better for your health, or we can spend $3 per light bulb and, it's going to be really great lighting. And so at the end of the day, the first thing is awareness. I mean, awareness is always curative. You need to know this is a problem because now you get to vote with your dollar. I mean, people aren't going to stop buying LED lights because they're cheap. But if you educate somebody, they might choose otherwise. People still smoke. That's okay, but we know there's a warning. There's no warning on the LED light bulb that says may cause cancer.
Right.
But if there's research that suggests that, should you know that information? That's really the key part here. So education and awareness has got to be this first place.
I remember when LED lights first came out and they were very expensive. And of course I wanted to invest in those because they were energy efficient. I mean, it seems to me that with research and development, R&D on the part of industry, they can create safer light bulbs and lighting that is also energy efficient, and ultimately the price will go down, as it always does.
Correct.
So
the problem is the masses that would buy that light right now, or me and a few of my friends, so the problem is there's not enough people. So in fact, I spoke with a company, somebody, I don't know how they got to me, but they want to know what I thought about a particular light bulb. And I said, well, I need to know a little more, blah, blah, blah. And I actually spoke to the business owner for this light bulb. And I said, look, based on what I see, the spectrum of light that you have, it's not good. And when we talked about it, he said, yeah, I know, but people they want blue light blocking, but they don't want to be in the dark, meaning they don't want the blue light blocking effects, meaning it's too much red, it's not enough light. They want the light, but they want to say they're blue blocking. So it's kind of that you want the illumination that you're used to, but you don't want to really completely sacrifice all the blue light to get it. And so that's where we're at, is that people know they can sell more if it's got a little more blue light in it, because people will buy that light, and it's the marketing pressure of, oh, blue light's big, so I'll do something towards it, but you're not really doing it in a fashion that's going to make the biggest impact.
It seems to me that every laptop we buy, certainly that is in a school, should have all of this addressed already. I shouldn't have to go get a program to download, which may or may not work 100%, because wouldn't, we're talking about melatonin and the cycle, but what about those phototoxic impacts, which could be damaging the retina for children because they don't filter the light.
Right. Like I think the industry kind of already knows this is a problem. That's why Apple has night shift, even though night shift is not going to give you the results that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Microsoft has its own version of that. I mean, they have these built in because I think they're aware that it's going to be a problem as more and more research mounts, and they can say they were trying to do something. And I think it's always the onus is on the user because, the marketer is not going to protect you. They're trying to sell, so when the reasonable doubt still exists, it's going to fall on the patient, the user, the buyer, the purchaser to be smart enough to protect themselves. And that's why I think, we have to just talk about it so that people know and they can share it with their friends and, start buying screens and putting on software and noticing the difference. And then when you talk to other people and you say, wow, I'm sleeping better, I lost weight, it's helpful. And then it grows, and then people will be hopefully spending their money wisely on, technology that is safer. And it's the same with wireless technology. I mean, there are options to make it better, to lower the power. I mean, just in how a Wi-Fi router manages its power, output. It doesn't have to be blasting 100% 24/7. It can lower down, and when there's no signals coming in, so that's a very simple example that, yes, but have you ever seen a router that says it manages energy better so you're getting less radiation? No, they just make it as cheaply as possible because people want their Netflix,
in Europe, they have a router that powers off. And interesting in the school. So this bill was passed, and there's a lot of it, certainly in Maryland, there are many parents working on this, advocating for safer tech in the schools. But now the school came out, with a Q&A saying that some of their routers power down. Now, we've tested some of them, and they are not powered down like you would think they would be. But it's happening. It needs to happen much quicker. But the more we talk about it, the more we're going to get there. And we have to, I think our kids certainly, as well as our adults, everyone deserves safe technology. I think it's outrageous that this technology is coming out and nobody, they're not arraigned. It's not safe.
I'll tell you what's interesting, and in the circles that I'm in, it's interesting that the younger crowd, even though they're the biggest abusers of the technology, when they hit the wall with illness and disease and symptoms and problems, they're a little quicker to learn compared to people in our generation, which are just, because it's happened slowly and we didn't really see it. They came right in, and when they hit the wall, they're kind of, when they get this information, some of them really just turn it around and very quickly. Whereas I think, because we've been in this evolution, it's been a slow burn. We don't really appreciate how bad it is. And so when you break at 50, it's not the same as when you break at 20, you realize I shouldn't be breaking. You know what I mean? It's really, so we kind of just brush it under the rug for like normal aging, which is the worst thing we can do with all this, to say, oh, this is normal, because everybody gets, bad disease by age 50,
Well, in colleges where mental health issues are escalating to numbers that have been unheard of from my colleagues who I've talked to at college mental health centers. I think such an important part of this, in addition to screens and everything that screens and social media brings, is the light, the wireless radiation, but also just that light. Even my high school kids now, that they have all this work due where they're working on computers till whatever time. I mean, this is just not okay. And
textbooks are gone. I mean, now everything's online. So it's really, you're forced to do this work online. So if you don't have a way to mitigate your computer, you're up the creek without a paddle, because
Yeah,
it's now you can't get a grade, you can't graduate without doing it. There's no other option.
I know. Um, I know. How about light, like if you, and this is just sort of on a side note, but I had a question. So if you're using the computer, shouldn't you always have another light on in the room? It shouldn't be that you're in complete darkness with a screen, right? Or
That's
certainly not
I
a
haven't
screen
seen
with
good
blue light.
studies to support that. The one thing I have seen is that having candlelight on, there's a meter that I've seen a video of that turns light information into sound. And if I turned on that meter with our computers right now, it's terrible cacophony of sound. It's buzzing, loud, and obnoxious. And if I shut all my lights off and turned on a candle, it would make like a pleasing tone. And it
Interesting.
turns out if you turn on the computer with the candle, the sound that comes out of the meter kind of knocks down dramatically and becomes much more pleasing. That's not a scientific paper a scientific finding by any mean. But based on what I know about the physics of light, I do believe just having that natural light source may mitigate a little bit. Now, that's completely my opinion. I don't want anyone to think if they turn on a candle, they're protected from all this in any way. But so there is this idea that the light that's behind the computer may matter, but I don't know that having more artificial light is the actual light. I would say having, maybe some fire or candlelight might have some benefit. But the other thing is, the intensity of the light. As it gets late, you do have an intensity kind of sensor in your body. So the stronger the light is at night, also, even if it's more on the red side. So you really want to kind of cut it down to as low of intensity as you can, too.
Mm.
And that's where it gets tricky, too, because brightness, usually most of the computer brightnesses work on flicker. So they just change the flicker rate of the monitor, and so that you can actually be. That's why having Iris and different software that blocks flicker can be helpful, because that's another, we won't talk about that, but there's a stroboscopic effect. The nervous system picks up on this frequency data, just like the other EMFs. It's another frequency data that you're downloading into your nervous system.
Now let's talk more about the nervous system and children and light. How light can impact kids in schools if they have often fluorescent lights,
Yeah.
as well as the LEDs.
So my favorite demonstration of that is from a guy by the name of John Ott, who was a freeze frame time-lapse photographer for Disney. And he did a lot of research in the 70s on this stuff, both in plants and animals. And he did some work in the school. And he put up time-lapse photography in the corner of a room. And you could see the kids in the classroom. And they had fluorescent lights, and the blinds were down. And the kids were running around like ants all over. And then they turned off the lights and opened up the windows. And all of a sudden, the time lapse now doesn't look like all this scattered ant movement. It's now like the kids are sitting and there's a little bit of movement, and then they're sitting. And it was almost like watching an ADD sensor go on and off. The kids were hyperactive. And then when you turned off the light signal, they stopped being hyperactive. And, we see this. I mean, you talk to any teacher, and I've talked to them, and they'll tell you the kids are way more hyperactive and their attention is zero. And again, this is another blue light phenomenon that's connected, that it's very stimulating light. That's why it keeps you up. That's why you like watching TV. That's why it's good. Television technology is good to be blue light, because it's all about advertising. And if you want to advertise, you need somebody up to advertise. So you don't want light that's going to put them to sleep, right? So, media wants to sell their advertising. That's how they make money too. So again, we're kind of stuck that we use it to get the information, but the people given to us don't mind that it makes us better consumers.
Wow. Yeah, hadn't thought about that with the advertising and the blue light. Well, tell me what we do about TV screens and.
TV is a tough one, because most TVs don't. You have more actually options on a computer monitor. There is something called Drift TV, which is a device that you can attach through your HDMI cables from your cable box to your TV, and it has a blue light filter. It really is more like yellowing. It's really more of a daytime thing. It's not great, but it's better than nothing. There are screens and filters that will block certain frequencies of light. But again, now you're talking about a DIY project and making a little screen that you can put up on your TV. The TV is a tough one. You know, you're almost better watching it on like a computer monitor if you have that option, because you have some choices. But TV is a tough one.
What do you recommend for computer monitors?
And what was that?
What do you recommend for computer monitors that don't have flicker and that, you know, that minimize?
The software is the easiest way. You know, it's hard. And again, you know, without people buying some sort of hardware to check and test to see if it's actually doing anything, the software is, again, that Iris Tech software, I strongly recommend. It does a nice job on those, and it's very customizable. So, you know, as you're in the beginning stages, you're not going to want to go super high on the red content, and you're going to want to be able to make it brighter when you're just not used to it. But then, you know, you can adjust those settings and kind of make it more stark, so that as you get used to it and you realize I don't really need all this light, and I'm sleeping better, and I want to go even deeper. You know, I want to improve it even more. How can I cut out even more blue light? So that's a good one. Just watch TV during the day with all the DVR stuff. I mean, your choices are, you don't have to watch it, but of course you want to talk at the cooler the next day in the office about what happened on whatever. I don't even know. I don't watch much TV. Whatever the current TV show is that people are watching. You know, if you watch it during the day, you're better off watching it earlier in the day than later at night. Again, because it's just less of a circadian mismatch that you're creating. So if I had the choice of watching TV, you know, right when I got home from work versus watching it before I went to bed, well, it's right after I get home from work is much better from a circadian standpoint. I mean, neither is great, but again, now if you have glasses on, so you can protect yourself with the glasses, so you can't change the TV, but you can change what hits your eye. That leaves your skin protected. It's a circadian rhythm is two parts. One is the blue light at night, but the other thing I just would be remiss in not mentioning is the other side of that upbeat and downbeat is the daytime, the sunrise, the morning sunrise. Those frequencies are what wind that clock. I mentioned that in the beginning about winding, setting your clock every day. At the sunrise, you have a particular set of frequencies and you're missing certain frequencies. That's the on switch for your brain. And it's that morning sunlight until UVA appears that tells your brain, hey, this is morning. Set your watch, and those frequencies set your watch for your hormones, your neurotransmitters. That light actually starts to make melatonin in your eye. So it turns out that you would say, well, it's made at night, right? But the chemicals that make melatonin are first made in the morning in your eye. So that morning light that you see, the first light you turn on most likely is not the sun. And that light is, again, setting your clock in a very specific way. You just are not aware of it.
Yeah, I love waking up in the morning right as the sun is rising, and just, you know, if we're outside with the dog or just being.
And that's a really good sign about your circadian rhythm. When you wake up sans alarm to the sunrise, your body has sensors on your skin to detect like 3 photons worth of light. Like, it's so sensitive, right? So, you know, as soon as that morning crack of light comes through your window, even if you have blackout shades, sometimes it's like a little, that is technically enough for your body to detect that the sun is out, and that should wake you up. That's how you were designed by nature, you know. And now, again, you may say, well, it's not convenient for me because I got to stay up till 2 a.m. and I got to sleep late. Okay, well, that's a choice, you know, and we all have choices about how we, you know, how we run our schedule and our lives. But, you know, the design is the design. I can't change that. Not yet.
You know, one of the things that I like, it puts me right to sleep, might as well be a drug, is when I have night shades, which are thick and cotton. I just put them on at night, and I can't live without them. I mean, and I'm not talking the little one you get in the airplane. It's like a thick, I should have an example, but I don't have one right here. I find it invaluable. It's like I put it on, I go to sleep. I used to have light blocking shades, but I actually made them. I sewed 3 curtains together to actually get a curtain that would block all the light, because it's coming out the top, it's coming out the sides. I had to create a whole system around the bedroom shades, and we just moved. And the lights outside are so bright, these street lights that are just beaming into the windows.
Harvard put out a study saying LED streetlights was increasing breast cancer in women.
Yeah.
So, again, when you talk about the refraction of the light off the smart board or the projector, the light just coming in from the street is affecting you. So it's really bad because it doesn't take much. Light works on nonlinear dynamics. So that means instead of 1 + 1 equaling 2, 1 + 1 can equal 1,000. With the butterfly effect, a small little change can have a huge effect. And that's where we miss the boat, is that these small subtle changes add up way more than just a little change adding up. It is non-linear. So the effects and the changes are happening faster and faster and faster. And that's what we see. More disease and younger diseases that we never saw moving and encroaching up the timeline for human beings. And it's non-linear. It's happening faster and quicker and more intense than you would ever expect.
Yeah, I mean, I know in neighborhoods all over here in the Washington, D.C. area, they're replacing all the old lights with now new LED lights. What about the impact to the birds and all the wildlife as well as people? It's just happening everywhere. And we need to raise awareness about this left and right. They're also, of course, putting antennas on top of these new hardened poles that they're putting up with the new lights, and then they can put antennas on top. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And your website again is?
Sure, it's www.quantumsleep.net.
How is the medical profession addressing this? I mean, I've never had any doctor, not our child's pediatrician, raise this issue. In fact, I raised
the sleep hygiene, darkness before you go to bed and cool, dark area before you go to bed. And we let that fly as if that's, acceptable. It's really the importance you put on it. I mean, I'm telling you that light hygiene, if you want to have good sleep, is the #1 factor you must get right. And so, there is no Benadryl, there is no Tylenol PM, there is no melatonin pill that is going to fix this. You must get your light right, period. It's just how you're designed from a circadian nature.
Yeah.
The importance that's placed on that is what's going to change your life. Because if somebody says, oh yeah, you probably should get your sleep hygiene, and gives you a piece of paper and you walk out the door, what importance did they put on it for you? None.
We should be, I think doctors should be writing prescriptions for light hygiene, make these changes. And I mean, so many adults I talk to are on CPAP machines, that sleep is their #1 issue.
Yeah, and for all the people that are like, I'm not really sure, if you look at all the diseases associated with sleep apnea, anything that interferes with your sleep does this. It's just how fast and how quickly it's moving you in those directions.
And then all our teenagers are on the phone nonstop, day to night.
True.
And they have coverings that we can put on phones, right?
They do. Lowbluelight.com has screens that you just put on the front, and it's yellow, so it blocks, again, about 50%, 40% the blue light. I use it. It's annoying because you lose. You're looking at a photo, but the other thing you can do on your phone is there's a triple-click accessibility shortcut, little kind of life hack that you can make, which makes the screen also very red, similar to like Iris, and that's much better than like the night shift and the things that are there on the phones generally, at least for the Apple products. I think the Google ones have a little better control, and I think Flux is available on there, so we have those options.
So Iris you can get on your just Apple, or?
Iris is not available on the iPhone. I think Flux is available on Google devices, and I'm not sure if Iris is or not. But Night Shift is is inadequate in my opinion for what I'm talking about. And there is a little hack in the settings that you can use what's called a color tint feature, and you can make that screen very, very red and you can set that by triple clicking your power or your if you have an older phone like I do, the button for phones that still have a button on the bottom. But that basically just turns the screen red and not, I don't know if I can accurately show that on my phone. Let's see.
And for laptops, Iris
So
and
here, I don't know if you can see, but if I triple click, that's red, and that's like not red. I'm not sure how well that's going to translate, but basically by triple clicking the button, I can make my screen pretty red. But it's, again, easy to use for reading text. Not going to be good if you're trying to do certain things, you know, to see pictures and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of work to do in raising awareness so that we just have some changes, both with companies doing research and design to make safer products, also a way to test. We need to have, you know, protocols in place so that when products go to market, what they're saying is true around this light, because I'm seeing all kinds of things when I delve in, and it's really hard as a consumer to know which to choose. And I think we need regulations in place or some sort of metrics so that we can trust what we're purchasing, you know.
Yeah, again, because marketers are going to say blue light blocking, and they do block blue light, but they're just not cutting it if you're looking to try to improve your health. You know, do you want junk light or do you want healthy light? That's just...
How about to the skin, aging, premature aging from light? You know, the cell phone, the screens, all of these wireless devices. Can you
just remember, what are the plastic surgeons charging people tons of money for? Red light therapy. Red light stimulates collagen production. You want to have tighter, you know, less winkly skin. Red light. Now, but of course, everybody thinks, well, if you go out in the sun, you're going to burn and become leather. But it's how you use it and how your skin can use it. You know, when you're a person that sits indoors 24/7 and you go out in the sun, you can't absorb it, and then it actually can damage your skin. But when you're always out in the sun, you know, native, you know, Aboriginal people that are out in the sun all the time, they don't have these problems, and they look fantastic, and their skin is beautiful. You know, it's just one of those things where, and then, you know, you become more sensitive to the light the more indoor you go. So then you go outside, and what happens is you end up saying, wow, I got burned, or the sun hurt me. I'm not going to do that again. It's the opposite. You're indoors so much that the sun is hurting you. That's the problem. You're indoors too much. You need to be outdoors more so you can build up this solar callus that allows your skin to absorb these frequencies and spread them appropriately to build your health, rather than to, you know, shun you away from it. It's the exact opposite. And that's the problem, is that people think, well, this justifies why I should be not in the sun. I just got burned in 5 minutes. No, that's how deficient in sun you are, that you can't even handle 5 minutes of sun.
How about eyes and, you know, eye health? I know that
sunglasses are terrible. Sunglasses are terrible. So even these look like I'm wearing sunglasses. When I'm outside, my glasses go down and I look up through. Sunglasses are blocking the light frequencies of light. In fact, in John Ott's book, Health and Light, which is a great read, it's also on my website, he talks about a hospital, I think it was, I don't know if it was South Africa or not, I'm forgetting, but it was a tribe of people, and like the white man came in and brought some of their tech, and the natives liked the sunglasses. So they started buying and trading for the sunglasses. And so meanwhile, there are people in like little, you know, thongs walking around half naked wearing sunglasses. And the local hospital started seeing people getting sick with cancer and stuff. It's just a little vignette. And again, I can't verify that, but it's one of those things where that's the small nonlinear change. You were very healthy people. All they did was block the sunlight in their life. And all of a sudden it changed the entire mix of how their health was.
Mm-hmm. So we need to get outside more.
It's basically, I mean, you know, it's exactly what you're saying. Get away from tech, get into nature. The more tech in your life, the more trouble you're going to be, because you just don't know how much that tech is affecting what you're doing. And the more nature in your life, the better off you're going to be, because that's what allows you to build the wellness back. So you got to mitigate the two.
Mm-hmm. I'm on tech all the time, trying to get people off tech and have safe tech.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting. So here, you're lowering your wireless, your radio frequency, your electromagnetic footprint in certain ways, and in other ways, you're increasing your blue light hazard potentially, right? And so it is that mix, if you can get outside and do some work outside, that's a win for you. Because then again, it's that same effect that I talked about, the candlelight in the background. Do I think using a computer wired indoors versus using it outdoors with a little bit of sun hitting you, it's better. It's probably not good that you're on the computer, but do I think if I had the choice of one of the two, 100% I'd stay outside and use it outside. Very hard to pull off for most people, but if you can, do it. Start doing it. See what it does. See if you notice a difference.
Yeah. Well, I normally am in a room where I'm near a window and I have the light off. And I can go outside if the weather's good. I have an Ethernet cord that runs out there. But, a lot of people aren't in that position.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And I'm also waiting for the numbers to come in on accidents from these LED lights when I'm driving. I've been blinded. These big trucks that come, or the SUVs or whatever they are, and they've got these LEDs at me. I mean, I can barely drive like I used to drive with all this crazy light out there. And the red, green, and yellow, the street lights themselves are LED.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a heavy lift. This is going to be a heavy lift. It's just like with wireless. Everything is going in one direction, and we got to
It's the exact same story, except this story has been going on for even longer than the wireless. And this was like the priming of the pump, because again, the association with the diseases, this was the ramp up, and then we added wireless to this sandwich. You know what I mean? So it really is, it's hard to get your teeth into this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope that the generations coming up, as they begin to realize what's going on and understand how well they sleep when they make these changes, that we'll start to see some changes from industry about what they can provide,
Yeah, I mean,
so,
as it grows, people will start to slowly make changes, and then industry will be interested. I mean, there's no reason we couldn't have, instead of basically heavily white blue light LED screens, to change the screen so that they were, heavier on the red side, but still give us some, or at least have modes where we can turn these things on and off. Again, choice. It's really choice. To me, people will still choose to smoke, and people may still want to watch TV a certain way. I've chosen to watch TV differently most of the time, but sometimes, I want to see the colors, because that's, it's just not, it's not enjoyable, but that's a choice I'm making. I know the risk I'm taking.
mm-hmm.
It's an educated choice, and I think we just owe people that choice. That's really what I think we want to give back, is the freedom to choose how they want to partake in this technology.
Right, and to be informed.
Right. Well, first thing you got to be informed, and then there's the choice. So the information has to come.
Right, and for those who don't have a choice, like in schools or in various workplaces where there is absolutely no choice, that's unacceptable. There should be protections in place for workers and for kids and for nursing home residents and at the hospital.
The nursing home was the worst place. These patients never get outside, ever.
Right.
Ever. They're indoor living, and that's why they get sicker quicker. If they're not sitting in front of the TV all day, they're just sitting under whatever terrible lighting that's in, and they probably don't shut it off until, really late at night, and probably it's not even their control. They're not even, able to shut the lights off themselves. It's a lot of times that maybe the staff come around and just shut it off at night.
Right. Or in the hospitals.
Forget it.
Making you up with all the beeps and the blurs and
the hospital is the worst place to be, because we control all these, all the EMF and the lighting that we put on you is really not so wonderful, especially for circadian rhythms. Think of an ICU. I mean, you can't sleep at all in an ICU. You got a nurse coming every hour checking on you. You got beeping IV poles and this and that and the other thing, and the person, there's a hubbub next door, and so when you don't sleep, I mean, that's the fastest way to get sicker. It really is. You're not going to get better. I mean, sometimes, you have a one bad night, and the next day you feel like you're getting sick. And that's healthy people. Now, what about the sickest people in the hospital? We're going to wake them up every hour. It's a challenge. But there are small studies with different lighting in ICUs and things, and they're seeing small improvements in care. So I think this is, we're at a time where there are subtle changes that are going to continue. But there are some hospitals, I don't think they're in America, I'm trying to remember if it was in Europe, but I read somewhere that their ICUs have changing lights.
Wow, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so basically, it's probably more blue heavy lights in the day, and it's changing towards red heavy at night, and that's a win. I mean, if we could let some sunlight in, we'd really be winning. But still, if we can decrease the impact on their sleep, they have a better chance of less sepsis, less infection, less everything. Because again, their immune system is being taken down by being in the ICU, and then we're trying to give them antibiotics to get them over this, but their body has everything they need. We just got to let it do its thing, get out of its way.
Right. I know that there's research in the NICU with grounding showing improved outcomes for preemies with reducing the electromagnetic load, non-ionizing.
Yeah. Because again, I mean, we take these children that are the weakest, and we put them in the microwave oven, because all the monitors and stuff in there, and the NICUs are going to be the first one to adopt the new technology,
I know. Well, let's hope that, I thank you, because I could just talk about this forever.
Yes.
There's so much here and so much to learn about this. So thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Yeah.